Hi everybody, this is Liam Martin from Running Remote. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about something that we haven't really talked about that much on this particular YouTube channel, which is how we ended up getting on 57 podcasts in under 90 days and the results that we had from that particular marketing technique to be able to market Running Remote, the conference that we run down in Bali every single year. This is something that I know a lot of people are probably really interested in. A lot of people try to get on podcasts, and we've actually built a process and a system that I think is super cost effective. It's actually one of the most cost effective methods that we used to be able to sell tickets to Running Remote, because literally all it cost was about 60 minutes of my time per podcast. So I spent maybe 57 hours on this particular task. Probably ended up costing me maybe at least that much extra time just in terms of prepping for all of these meetings. So let's call it like 100 to 120 hours that I spent, and it ended up with a fantastic ROI. I think it worked out to like $400 to $500 per hour that we ended up making based off of ticket sales. So we're gonna go into the major tips that I have on how to actually do this, and then bring you through the entire process from beginning to end that we implemented to be able to get onto these podcasts. So let's get into it. Number one, why the heck did I do this? Well, as I said before, we run a conference down in Bali called Running Remote. It's a conference on how to build and scale remote teams. And what I was very interested in doing as a marketer was seeing which channels end up producing what return on investment. And we tested a whole bunch of stuff and found out that podcasts in our earlier testing was one of the most effective methods that I could use to be able to get the word out there to other people, to talk about the conference, tell them that it exists, tell them that it's something completely new that a lot of people haven't really kind of been able to go to before, and that they should check it out. So we discovered that out of all the other forms of advertising, someone listening to a story that I had about building a remote team for 60 to 90 minutes, if they're actually are going to listen to you for an entire 60 minutes and they're probably a qualified customer and they want to sign up for your conference as an attendee at the end of that podcast. So the way that we implemented this is we basically did a massive outreach campaign. So we had 4 different people in this process, and you can probably simplify this quite a bit more. You can actually do it completely on your own, but this is the way that we did it. We had a researcher that ended up researching all of the different people that are running podcasts right now that are popular in any way, that connect to remote teams, building a business, entrepreneurship, etc. And we got those people all into a huge database, and then we had the second person on that team to do outreach on my behalf. So that person would reach out with an email saying, "Hey, human being that runs a podcast, this is Jimmy. I think that Liam Martin would be a great fit for what you're doing. He's running this conference, and this is what this conference is about. It's about building and scaling remote teams, and we actually have employees in 28 different countries all over the world, and we could really speak to these 3 particular issues that I can speak well on. I would love it if we could book Liam on for a call. Do you have any time next week or the week after?" And so we would send out that very simple email. We also had a few follow-up sequences after the fact, so if people didn't open up that first email, they would get another email from us in a week or 2 that would just be fired automatically. And from that process, we ended up getting a whole bunch of interest. And it really depends on whether or not you have the right pitch, and it's critical to have the right pitch. We had this pitch where we're saying, hey, we're bringing all these people to Bali, and we're going to be hanging out in a big bamboo villa treehouse thingy in the middle of the jungle, and we're going to have 500 people there learning about how to build and scale remote teams. I think a lot of people found that interesting and were like, yeah, okay, I'll bring this guy on and I'll get him to talk about it. Now, at the beginning of these podcasts, I was not very good. By the end, I was fantastic because every single question that they would ask, I had already answered 4 to 5 times somewhere else. So everything I had a scripted response, and it was a lot easier to be able to get through these things once you've knocked out 1, 2, 3 dozen podcasts and you have them all under your belt. That's really important as well, is to make sure that we actually ended up batching them. So I would do like 3 to 4 per day. And I would just say, okay, I'm going to do nothing with podcasts throughout the day. And by that 3rd or 4th podcast, it was just flowing because I'd be very easily connected to the subject matter. I would have it all in my brain. I would feel relaxed, and things would just kind of flow after that point. So once we built all of that in, then we would wait for that podcast to go live, and then we would push that to our community, either on Twitter or on Facebook, and that would also continue to reinforce the current community that we had, continuing to give them interesting content about building and scaling remote teams. And then also, obviously, those podcasters would then distribute their podcast and promote it as much as possible throughout their network, and we would get those new people that would work into the funnel as well. So for those that want to know, so we did 57 podcasts in 90 days. And the results were quite interesting. We ended up moving approximately 30 tickets out of that entire campaign, which worked out to about half a ticket per podcast. So every single podcast that I would do, I in essence averaged out about half a ticket sold per podcast. And this basically meant that we made around $400 per podcast that was promoted. Which is pretty cool. Something we would definitely change is only about 10 of those podcasts actually moved tickets. So we ended up asking anybody to be able to get onto their podcast. If they had any type of a podcast at all, we would ask to be able to get onto their podcast. And sometimes I do a podcast and maybe only 20 or 30 people would listen to it. And then other days I do a podcast and maybe 20 to 30,000 people would listen to it. So not all podcasts are created equal, and a lot of podcasts did not move tickets. So what we would do in the future, what we're planning on doing in the future, is we really measure search volume. So the way that we do that is we jump into our SEO tool, we use Ahrefs, and we literally, the podcast is on, we drop that URL into Ahrefs and we find out how much search volume that particular website is getting. If it's not getting that much traffic, then we don't end up working with those people. Another great tip is if you go to listennotes.com, it's a fantastic place to be able to find podcasts that might be connected to your particular niche. So anybody that is an influencer in remote work, we would drop them into Listen Notes. We would grab all of the podcasts that they had been on, and then we would reach out to them saying, hey, person, this is Liam, and we saw that this person, who's the influencer remote work, ended up being on your podcast 3 months ago. And if you really like that person, then I think that I would be a great fit for it. Here's what I'm doing, XYZ, talking about running remote, building this remote team. And I'd love it if you could have me on. Would love to talk about it. And that's incredibly powerful if you really want to speak contextually to those people. So that's how we got on to 57 podcasts in under 90 days. And if you've listened to me on one of those podcasts, then you should probably just subscribe to this YouTube channel, because that is going to be, if you liked what was on that podcast, you'll really like what's on the YouTube channel. And also too, if you have any questions about how we actually did it, or if you want any of the other, like the email copy that we used or anything like that, ask it down in the questions, comments below, and I'll be able to answer it down there for you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you really like this video, as I said before, subscribe to the channel. We talk about building remote teams, and I think it's pretty cool. So with that, I will see you in the next video.